What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I will finally be doing my official 2023 NBA draft full lottery mock draft. Again, I've been doing these videos week by week now, and we finally gotten to the point where I've officially selected all 14 players on my draft board, and I'm pretty excited with the list that I've got so far. Will it be accurate? Who knows? Some teams like to make some very questionable moves in draft night, or they just might not agree with me on who I potentially have. And again, if you don't agree with me, or you do agree with me, before we jump into it, definitely let me know your thoughts and opinions on this all down below, and what you guys think about my mock draft picks. Of course, I would very much like to know. The other thing I'd like to say before getting started into it all is just that at the time of making this video, we don't know the official mock 2023 draft lottery. So we don't have that yet. It hasn't actually happened at the time of making this video. So for this video, I will essentially be doing these picks based off standings and where the teams sit. For example, the Detroit Pistons are last in the NBA, therefore they will have the first overall pick, and the San Antonio Spurs are third last, so they'll be having the third pick. Again, it's not really overly complicated. It will just be going based off where the teams are sitting right now, because as I said, we don't currently have the information on where teams will be going in the draft lottery thus far. So I guess without further ado, here's who I think should be going in the draft lottery in 2023. Let's start off with the first overall pick, which is currently being held by the Detroit Pistons. I definitely don't think there is really much debate on who should go at pick number 1 in this draft. And of course, I will be selecting Victor Wembanyama, who is just one of the most special talents we have ever seen coming into the NBA for, some time now. The fact is, this guy is about 7'4". Some even have him listed as 7'5". Can literally ball handle and create his own shot like Kevin Durant. Of course, very much plays similar to a couple of the players drafted recently in Evan Mobley, and of course Chet Holmgren, even being compared to, NBA All-Stars in the last couple years as well, like Kristaps Porzingis, but with the potential of being a 10 times better player. It's almost like this guy is being said to be, if you would kind of put Chet Holmgren and Kevin Durant and even Kristaps together, which is just an insane comparison. Some people literally have Kevin Durant as a top 10 player and literally of all time. And Victor, this guy is, the fact is, he's a lot taller than Kevin Durant, can do everything KD can do, but can guard the center position as well, and just has already been compared to like that Kristaps Porzingis defense when Kristaps was in his prime. And I think people forget how good of a defender Kristaps was back when he was playing for the New York Knicks before the injuries. That guy was averaging like 2 blocks a game as a 7-footer. And imagine what Victor's going to do as a 7'4" guy who can also create his own shot. Now, I know the Detroit Pistons have a couple centers they are trying to develop here and there, like Jalen Duren, and of course, the recently acquired James Wiseman, but this is a no-brainer for them. It just makes a whole lot of sense to go for this. You're going to pick best available, and the best available is by far Victor Wembanyama, who, partnering up with 2 prolific playmakers in Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, just, oh my god, it seems like an absolutely insane thing to put on paper. And if you are a Detroit Pistons fan, the potential of having Victor on your team right now would be pretty insane. Like, in a couple of years, you're definitely looking at, if Victor can stay healthy, you're looking at a potential NBA championship one day with that type of, I think, young core going on. And pick number 1 in Cade, a very good young defensive guard who can also ball handle and create his own shot in Jaden Ivey, and Victor Wembanyama. It's just definitely one of the best, if not the best, young cores in the NBA. Of course, in saying all of these massive positives with Victor, there does unfortunately come some negatives, of course, those being the fact that there are a lot of concerns about his, I think, body and how he will hold up in the NBA. He's already had a bit of an injury past right now, an injury history, I should say, and he's only like 19 years old and is already kind of battling with that over his head. And again, I mentioned before Kristaps Porzingis being a 7'2" or so guy who would just be an absolute elite defender, but then the injuries started to come and he definitely struggled for a bit, has really bounced back now, but is not really the player I think a lot of people thought he could potentially be. And again, touch wood, but the main kind of knock and hit on Victor right now could definitely be his injury, history, and I think the issue that he could potentially further on do it. Again, he is a very slim and skinny player as well, who I think will definitely have to put on some weight when entering the NBA. But there is no doubt in my mind, Victor is, again, one of the most talented players coming into an NBA draft. Since Zion, since LeBron, etc. He definitely fits that criteria as one of the most talented players ever. And yeah, whatever team drafts him, we'll just obviously pray for the best so no injuries happen, but this guy could of course be a freak of nature, a 7'4" type of Kevin Durant player that is just, moves like a big man and all that type of stuff. And yeah, it's definitely going to be a really, I think, awesome thing to see maybe him in the NBA. With the number 2 overall pick, though, we do have the Houston Rockets, and with that pick, I have the Houston Rockets selecting Scoot Henderson. I think this is also a really good pick for him, and of course the Rockets as well. I think this is a nice fit, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Scoot is of course 6'2" and is being compared to a bit of a hybrid of Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose, and those are two awesome, I think, comparisons. Whether or not you want to hate on Russell Westbrook, there's no doubt to admit that this guy was an MVP of the league at one stage and has been known as a prolific ball handler and playmaker who can definitely help his team out quite a bit. The athleticism is very similar between these players, and I definitely see some Derrick Rose athleticism in him. And of course, the potential on the defensive end as just a really good, athletic, young point guard is definitely going to be there as well. I love this fit for the Houston Rockets. I've been saying for quite a bit now, they just need a point guard who's going to come in and steady the offense, be nice and calm, play make, and score when he needs to, and of course help defensively. That might not come in his first season, but it will definitely, hopefully, be there for them one day. And I just think it's a better fit to put him alongside Jalen Green than Kevin Porter. It's too hard to have these two guards who just continue to chuck up shots, not really calm and relax the offense. There's no real ball movement or, fluidity with having those two in the backcourt. And I think if you change Kevin Porter Jr. and replace him with Scoot Henderson, not only does that improve probably the defense and playmaking and ball movement of the team, I think it also calms Jalen Green down a little bit and kind of reassures him on the shot that he needs to take. I think he will get open a bit more with teams having the stress to guard Scoot Henderson. I think Scoot Henderson's the type of guy with a couple years in the NBA on his belt. Can definitely, I think play make to Jalen Green a bit better than what Kevin Porter Jr. has so far in his career. And I think the ball movement will just be a whole lot better. Again, defense is a bit of an issue with this Rockets team. I believe they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. So again, improving that on that end at the point guard position is also a really awesome thing. The fact that Scoot Henderson has been compared to two former MVPs of the league is an absolute astronomical thing. He has the shot creation athleticism that Derrick Rose had, athleticism that Russell Westbrook had, the playmaking that Russell Westbrook has, and all this type of stuff. The rebounding, I think, is there as well. Yeah, he's definitely a player who I think could be somewhat complete in the NBA. And the rumor has it is he might not even be 6'2" anymore. There's rumors going around that he's actually going to be listed at 6'3". very, very soon, and that 6'2" listing might be wrong right now. So having a 6'3" guard definitely helps defensively as well, and this is just an obvious pick for the Houston Rockets. If they do want to take it that step further, I still think bringing in a veteran player to help Scoot Henderson develop and whatnot would be an awesome thing to potentially do. There's going to be a ton of guys out there that they could go and do, but and trade for. We know the Cleveland Cavaliers previously helped Darius Garland out by bringing in Ricky Rubio, again, veteran type of playmaking point guard who just was able to teach Garland new things and really helped him develop as a player. They're going to be options for Scoot Henderson. I think the Rockets should do that. Kyle Lowry might be up for trade very, very soon, and you could definitely take on his contract and get a first-round pick maybe out of it by doing it. And plus, you could bring in a veteran player who can help Scoot Henderson develop. And yeah, Lowry can help him with, on the defensive end, playmaking, all that stuff. And I just think that'd be a really awesome thing. And yeah, this is kind of a match made in heaven, I think, for the Houston Rockets. A really good idea. With the third overall pick, though, I do have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Brandon Miller. Now, I'm not sure if Brandon Miller is the most Spurs player out there. Spurs are really specific on the players that they, of course, try and take. We know that Jeremy Sohan was a very Spurs type of player, very defensive orientated. And Brandon Miller might not be as good of a defender as like a Jeremy Sohan type of guy, but I think there is a lot of potential on that end when we do look at Brandon Miller. He is, at the time making this video, compared to Paul George coming into this draft, a guy who's 6'9", who has the ability to go from the 2 to the 4 position on defense. He is a bit lanky, but we know that's never been an issue for Spurs players in the past. He's incredibly athletic and a great scorer as well, and is believed that he could potentially develop on that two-way end type of role that Paul George has done for so many years, being an elite scorer and an elite defender as well. If Brandon Miller can, of course, be an elite defender in the NBA, that will 100% be what the Spurs want and what the Spurs need. Again, the only knock on Brandon Miller is there is a bit of an issue with explosiveness, and he doesn't exactly seem to have a great burst and being able to separate off the dribble. That can definitely be an issue in the NBA. It's a thing that makes a lot of players great, and we've seen draft players in history be not very good at that and not really translate to the NBA. Of course, one being Josh Jackson. There was always an issue sometimes with his, of course, I think, dribble off the first step, and I think he's burst at times, and Josh Jackson would either be really good, with that, and I think his athleticism would show that, but at times when he was kind of matched against, much more elite players than what he played with in college, we know Josh Jackson just couldn't do it, and that is a concern I think Brandon Miller could definitely have, but if he does adjust to that, I think he could be an absolutely terrific scorer in the NBA. But the most important thing is, I think with this Spurs team and how they want to play, if he can be a two-way player like Paul George and put an awesome and consistent effort in on the defensive end, he's going to be exactly what the San Antonio Spurs want, and he is going to fit into their system perfectly. And that's exactly what they need. It's been said that he's a pretty decent shooter as well. And yeah, I think that it will be a very good fit. Again, if he can be a defender, then yeah, awesome. It's a terrific move right there. Being lanky and all that stuff, one of the few teams that I don't think really care about that is the Spurs. The Spurs aren't going to force you to put on weight. They're not going to do any of that, I don't think. And if anything, Popovich is a terrific coach who's going to use that to his advantage and make sure that Brandon Miller gets the best out of it that he possibly can. So realistically, he might not be the most Spurs player in the world so far, but if he can develop into what they are saying Brandon Miller could potentially develop into, he will very rightfully become a Spurs player and could be a similar player to Paul George and even a Kawhi Leonard in the NBA, in my opinion. I think, yeah, that just kind of fits in with what I think the Spurs want. Now, with the fourth pick, I do have the Charlotte Hornets Of course, it's a bit of a hard one. The two players that I actually was battling on whether or not who I wanted Charlotte to pick were actually going to be out of Asua Thompson and Amen Thompson. And that's pretty funny because, believe it or not, they're actually both twins. But with the 4th overall pick, I've actually decided to pick Asua Thompson, who is, I think, the better defender / shooting guard of the duo. I believe Amen Thompson is actually ranked higher and is ranked at 4th, and Asar is ranked at 5th. But I actually think Asar, he definitely just, I think, makes a lot more sense for this Charlotte Hornets team, and they're both very similar as a player, but I think Asar is just better equipped to guarding that shooting guard position, which I think kind of meshes well with LaMelo Ball. I think if you were to go with Amen, it just might take the ball a little bit off LaMelo, which is not exactly what you want. I think Asar coming into this team and playing the shooting guard position at 6'7" is absolutely lethal. The fact you would have two 6'7" players in your backcourt defensively would just be absolutely insane. I believe he has a 6'11" wingspan, and just again, on that defensive end, I think could be a really interesting player. He's actually said to be a bit of a skywalker. He has a freakish ability as a player who can definitely dunk really consistently. He's being compared to a couple different players here and there. I believe he's kind of being compared to a bit of SGA and Terrence Ross, which, I don't know, you don't see many players compared to Terrence Ross because of who Terrence Ross is now. Not very good anymore, but I think people forget how good Terrence Ross was back when he played for the Toronto Raptors and whatnot. An extremely athletic shot creator who could kind of do really anything on the floor. Again, Asar is being said that he has a decent mid-range. He could definitely develop on it down the line, but he has an extreme upside as a defender who reads the passing lanes very, very well and has extremely good weak side help as well. There's not exactly too much knocks on Asar. I don't believe he is as good of a ball handler as what his brother is, and I think there is some work for him to do as an outside shooter. But from what I'm hearing is he's still a pretty decent shot creator who is extremely athletic and will definitely appear on a highlight tape every now and then, while also just having the potential to be an extremely good defender in the NBA. And I actually think that's kind of what you need to put with LaMelo Ball. He doesn't need to handle the ball or anything like that on this team, which is, of course, his weaknesses. I think his upside is exactly what the Charlotte Hornets need, which I think is, of course, athleticism, very, very good defense, and still maybe another shot creator to come in. And again, if they move on from Terry Rozier, which is rumored to be happening pretty soon, Asar would be a really good shooting guard to play with LaMelo Ball. I think it'd actually be a really, really good duo, and everything LaMelo Ball can't do, which is, I think, consistent defense and all that type of stuff, I think Asar kind of comes in and picks up that pieces. And if you got a dude like Asar who can be pretty decent with the mid-range and, just league average from the three-point shooting and all that type of stuff, that's still decent. You're bringing him in, I think, for his defense and shot creating, and I think that will definitely help out LaMelo Ball down the line. And yeah, if they manage to bring back Miles Bridges, imagine having a team of LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Asar. You're literally just going to have non-stop highlight tapes all the time. It's going to be absolutely awesome, I think, for that NBA team. And again, as I just said, he's not exactly that great of a passer or ball handler, but he kind of does everything else really, really well and has an extreme upside on defense that should definitely translate to the NBA level. With the 5th overall pick, I do have the Orlando Magic, who I believe have another first round pick that should be in the top 10 in this draft as well. And with this pick, it was pretty hard because they already have a lot of guards, but I do actually have them taking Amen Thompson. This was an extremely hard one because it's really unsure. I'm really unsure what the Orlando Magic are going to be doing with their future guard situation. They already seem like they've got their power forward and I think small forward locked in with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. Of course, their center position might need to have some work down the line, but still Wendell Carter is a pretty reliable center. At that point guard position, they've got Markelle Fultz, who has definitely improved quite a bit this season, coming back from injury. Cole Anthony, who I've always said looks like he could be a really good six-man down the line. I think that's what they're finally using him as, and I think that makes sense. And of course, Jalen Suggs. Now, I don't know what's going to be going on with Jalen Suggs. I'm not too sure exactly what his future is going to be like on this team. I don't think they have really got what they wanted out of him. But if you bring in a dude like Amen Thompson, I think that's actually a really nice play to maybe start with Markelle Fultz, who kind of, again, fits in with this team a little bit, especially with the height. Having him as a 6'7" shooting guard down the line, I think would be a really cool idea. Amen Thompson, I believe, from all the reports that I've kind of heard, is actually being compared to SGA, which is a really awesome comparison. He has been really, really good in the NBA as well. And also, he's been compared to Ja Morant for his athleticism and explosiveness, which is just really good as well. Unlike his brother Asar, he's actually said to be a really good playmaker and ball handler, which I think would be really nice for this team too. He's being said as a bit of a 6'7" combo guard who can definitely be really awesome on the defensive end, but can definitely be a playmaker who can also score. This is, of course, a really good comparison in the SGA type of thing, being called a combo guard who has extremely good first step and explosive athleticism is definitely something you want on your team. The issues are, I think, with Amen Thompson is he is being said that he's not a very good three-point shooter and can definitely struggle from the three-point line, which is a bit of an issue that could somewhat be a deal breaker for the Orlando Magic, as they already have Markelle Fultz, who's not a very good three-point shooter at the time of making this video, and Paolo Banchero, who I don't think has really been given the opportunity to show whether or not he's a good three-point shooter or not. Of course, he's had to take a lot of the shots and be a big shot creator guy, but I think down the line he could definitely improve on that as well. There are a bit of issues with this. If you have a starting five of Fultz at the 1, Thompson at the 2, Wagner at the 3, Banchero at the 4, and Carter at the 5, there's not a whole lot of three-point shooting on there, and that could definitely scare me. But if you're going to look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, again, have a starting five of Garland, Mitchell, Okoro, Allen, and Mobley, other than, like, Garland and Mitchell, there's not really any three-point shooting in that starting five at all. Of course, Okoro has improved, but your guards don't. They're the only ones that have the, consistent three-point shooting going on. And I think Franz Wagner can be a consistent three-point shooter. I think, Banchero with time can definitely be a consistent three-point shooter. And who knows? Amen Thompson might be a decent three-point shooter one day. But the realism is, if you are making this team and you're picking Amen Thompson, you're not doing it because of the three-point shooting. You're doing it, I think, because of the defensive end and, ball movement that could eventually come out of this one day. I think the ball movement could be absolutely awesome, and the defense will be absolutely scary. You think about it like this: you'd have Markelle Fultz at the point guard, who's like 6'3", Thompson, who's 6'7" at the shooting guard, Wagner's like 6'10", Banchero's like 6'10", and then I think Carter, 6'11" or so as well. I think 6'10" there too. The defense would be able to switch from nearly every position on there other than Fultz. It would be an absolute scary thing, and I think that's where you bring in Amen Thompson for, and I think he can definitely help out with that and just be a really nice player. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense for the Orlando Magic to go with him. Might not be the greatest fit, but he's the best player available, and you can turn it into a good fit. Very similar to what the Cleveland Cavaliers have done with their drafting. They can become a very good defensive-orientated team who is absolutely insane when it does come to ball movement and athleticism by just picking Amen Thompson. With the 6th overall pick, it has definitely changed a couple times in the last couple days, but at the time of making this video, the Portland Trailblazers actually own the 6th pick, and this was a really hard player, I think, to kind of select for them, because it's really hard to kind of tell what direction Portland are going to be going in. Will they be, potentially trading this pick to continue to maybe furthermore, try and add another star to help Dame contend for a championship? Or will they, be doing what they did last season, where they draft another top 10 pick player to kind of develop alongside Dame and all of the above. And that's why I kind of think they're probably going to be doing in this draft. So in kind of taking that all in, I do actually have them taking best available, and it so happens that the best available kind of fits what Portland actually need right now. So with the 6th overall pick, I do have the Portland Trailblazers selecting Jarris Walker, who is, of course, I believe, a 6'7", 6'8", very heavy, strong type of power forward who is extremely athletic and can definitely, catch a lob here and there. Just a very versatile option. He's being compared to a bit of a John Collins type of, Paul Millsap type of player as well. He's being said that not only can he guard the 4 very well, but he's also flexible enough to actually move over to that 5 position if needed. He's, of course, also being listed as a really solid 3-point shooter and a nice mid-range shooter as well, even having decent field goal efficiency at the moment. And I just think he honestly kind of fits what the Portland Trailblazers are kind of wanting to do right now. And they've already got a couple of certified guards, of course, in Shaedon Sharpe, Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, and then they've, of course, got a really certified forward in Jeremy Grant. I think it'd actually be really cool to kind of add another one of those guys in Jarris Walker, who not only can help with the defense that they do, of course, sometimes lack, but can switch onto that 4 and that 5, definitely help out from the perimeter, but also being an athletic beast who can honestly potentially crash the boards and also score off a Damian Lillard lob, off a pick and roll, all of that type of stuff. I definitely think Jarris Walker has the capability of doing. Now, there's nothing really kind of flashy about this guy's stats. He is averaging 11 and a 7 per game. That is 11 points and 7 rebounds. But he honestly, just the way he kind of plays and the way he goes about it, really does seem like it would kind of convert over to the NBA. And I think that was kind of what was being said about John Collins before he was, of course, drafted into the NBA as well. I really do think when we look at a guy like Jarris Walker, he kind of ticks that same thing. And I just think this guy can definitely help out the Portland Trailblazers, and he gives them a reason to not want to trade this pick if this is where the Trailblazers do, of course, select from. If you add a guy like Jarris Walker, this can definitely help and really change the dynamic of this Portland Trailblazers team. I really don't think Portland are as off as what a lot of people think they are. There is definitely a lot of changes and things they still do desperately need to make, but I'm really happy with Damian Lillard wanting to be loyal, and he's actually been content with staying as a Portland Trailblazer, and I really think there's still a lot to build on with this team. Their starting 5 is pretty decent. We'll get that straight out of the way. That's definitely a really nice thing about their team, but their bench is really not that good, in my opinion. And I think if you go out and sign, draft Jarris Walker, of course, maybe go out and sign a potential another starter, right? We could be looking at a situation where you're moving players like Matisse Thybulle and Cam Reddish, of course, to that bench type of role. Therefore, they can also go and sign maybe some more veteran type of dudes to come off that bench. I think their starting 5 before the trade deadline was really nice. Now, it could definitely do some work, but I still think it's pretty solid. But you get a couple dudes on there who could definitely come off the bench and maybe impact there as well. So for their starting 5, look, there might be a little bit of work because, of course, they did trade Josh Hart. But before that, it was looking really, really nice and something that they could definitely build on and add to by the bench. And if you're bringing in a dude like Jarris Walker, a player like that, and you go out and do a couple other things here and there, I think the Portland Trailblazers could definitely be a really solid team going forward. So that's why I have them selecting Jarris Walker with the 6th overall pick. Now, moving on to pick number 7, we of course do have the Indiana Pacers, who have definitely been a bit of a shock team, I think, in 2023. They've, of course, dropped off a bit, but showed really promising signs with Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and, of course, Miles Turner just being a really good, I want to call big 3, and I definitely think they will progress into being one of the biggest big 3s, if that makes sense, in the NBA. And I still think there is a lot of room to add there, and there's a real big kind of Indiana Pacer type of player who's available on the board right now, who I kind of think would somewhat fit this, of course, Pacers team. And that actually does, of course, happen to be Cam Whitemore, who I believe is a 6'7" small forward who is being compared to a bit of OG Anunoby and Desmond Bane as well. But I actually like that OG Anunoby comparison a bit more. Kind of a guy who doesn't need to be a big shot creator, but a guy who can, be a very consistent 3-point shooter who can maybe defend 1 through 4 and just be an extremely versatile defender on the court. And I think that's what we're kind of looking like we're going to be seeing with Cam Whitemore. I think the ability to maybe turn into a bit of a shot creator will be there. We know OG and Desmond Bane kind of ended up becoming shot creators as their their career has gone on further and further at the time of making this video. Of course, the thing is with, Cam Whitemore is he will definitely be a project player, as he is just a decent defender now. It's not like he's extremely elite at that, but the potential is definitely there, and I think he can really mount into being a very solid defender in the NBA. He's just really known to be a really nice shooter who I think can kind of move around, the field and just be a really good, around the court, and just be a really, really consistent guy like that. Again, he's not exactly that great when it comes to ball handling or anything like that, but the kind of beauty thing about this Indiana Pacers team is he doesn't exactly need to be. They've already got a bunch of really great guys who can handle the ball and pass the rock. If you're bringing in a dude like, Cam Whitemore, he kind of fills in what this Pacers team doesn't have consistently, and that is maybe a guy who's going to be an elite role player in the NBA. I think what they are going to want right now is for Benedict Mathurin and, of course, potentially Tyrese Halliburton to be the 2 big shot creators on this team, the 2 all-star type of guys. And then I think they're going to want Miles Turner to be the, perennial defender of this team as well. They've already got all of these boxes kind of ticked. The only couple things I think they might need are some extremely good role players, which they somewhat already have one in Buddy Hield, but could definitely furthermore build on that. And of course, maybe some more rebounding here and there, and maybe a player to play that power forward position down the line. So you could go and draft Cam Whitemore, maybe trade a Buddy Hield or so to bring in a power forward here and there as well. One that could be on the move very soon is like a John Collins. I just think, geez, imagine seeing a team that'd be like Halliburton at the 1, Mathurin at the 2, Whitemore at the 3, Collins at the 4, and Turner at the 5. Oh my god. Everyone in there can guard everyone. They all are pretty decent shooters. Collins maybe not at the moment, but has definitely shown he can be in his career. Bunch of athletic beasts in there as well. Like, goddamn, that team would be really good looking on paper. And yeah, I think Cam Whitemore might be somewhat of a more of a mystery to some of the players that I have kind of talked about previously, but this is a dude that could come in and be an extremely versatile shooter, maybe can develop on that shot creating and I think defensive end as well. But I think that's what is so good about this guy, is it already looks like he is getting there, and by the time he's in the NBA could turn that extremely good shooting touch all around the court into being an elite shot creator maybe one day as well. Like, if it doesn't work out, then whatever, right? But if it does work out, then yeah, you've got like 3 really good young shot creators on this Indiana Pacers team. And worst thing for Cam Whitemore is he might be an elite shooter, which is that's a pretty promising sign in the NBA. If you can be an elite shooter and defend your player and just do your role, there's not much more you can ask for. And I definitely think this is the type of guy who can maybe accomplish something like that in the NBA. So with the 7th overall pick, I do have the Indiana Pacers selecting Cameron Whitemore. Now with the 8th overall pick, this is a team that, I'm not exactly too sure how I feel about this team. It's a very interesting one, but it is the Washington Wizards. I am also very happy that Bradley Beal has decided to, stay. I think it's a very awesome thing to have loyalty among players, and it's, I think, a good thing to know that there is a player who is here right now who is willing to help build this team and help rebuild it, and is going to be here for the long term. So I just think it makes a whole lot of sense to continue to hit the draft, which they've been doing, and hopefully for them, they'll finally nail an extremely good pick, which they haven't been able to do in the last couple years, unfortunately, with players like Johnny Davis just not really panning out so far. Of course, they're still young, and we still got to give them time. They could become very good players, but at the end of the day, the player who I have them drafting, I think, will hopefully change this team. And again, he's a bit of a tiny bit of a project, but also this guy has a lot of potential to be like a Josh Giddey type of players who he's being compared to, and that is, of course, Anthony Black. I think the big thing this Washington Wizards team has been needing for a very long time is a playmaking point guard, and even though Anthony Black's stats haven't exactly been that great when it does come to the playmaking, and he definitely has a lot of potential to make those extremely good, flashy passes, like a couple of the NBL players who have gone into the NBA, those being LaMelo Ball and, of course, Josh Giddey. Now, Anthony Black didn't actually go to the NBL, but he kind of plays a lot like those two guys. He actually comes from Arkansas College, and again, he's actually being compared to Josh Giddey and a bit of Sean Livingston as well, which are pretty good comparisons. This guy is a very nice 6'7" guard who can definitely play, I think, the 1 through the 3. He is a really unselfish player who can definitely make some really nice, smart passes. He's also got a really decent jump shot that may need to, of course, develop his three-point shot, but it is looking really nice. But he's a guy who's a pass-first type of guy who I think could really benefit this Washington Wizards team down the line. It's something that they really haven't had the luxury of having, is a point guard that will actually pass the ball and help out on that type of, side of the NBA. And I think if you put a dude like Anthony Black there and you tell him all you got to do is pass the ball and be a versatile defender, which the Washington Wizards kind of have neither of, unfortunately, then yeah, you're filling two of, I think, the biggest holes that this Wizards team has in passing and defense. And I think this would be awesome to partner up with Bradley Beal and potentially Kristaps. No idea if Kyle Kuzma's going to be here for the long run. Again, this big three just unfortunately hasn't really worked that well. I don't know if it's the supporting cast or what it is that they have on this team that is completely going wrong. I just think it's the lack of defense and playmaking being the two main culprits. And yeah, they unfortunately missed out last year where a couple players that they wanted to draft, like Dyson Daniels, didn't actually fall to them. And Dyson Daniels was, of course, drafted the Pelicans, who I also think isn't really working that well there. Would have been awesome to see him on this Wizards team. But yeah, they need a dude like Dyson Daniels. They need a guy like Josh Giddey. Those guys who are both happen to be Australian, but both happen to be guys who are like 6'7", can defend really, really well, have a decent jump shot, and of course are really nice playmakers. Anthony Black fits that criteria, and as I said, he brings in two things that the Wizards don't have, which is defense and playmaking. Of course, he will be not probably as efficient in those things coming into the NBA. We've seen a lot of point guards in recent times like Darius Garland, struggle in the NBA at the start, but then eventually develop into being a really good player. I think Dyson Daniels is going to be another one of those guys. And then Anthony Black, not sure it will click for him straight away. But again, if Bradley Beal is patient, which he has been for an extremely long time, so I don't see why he wouldn't be. I think Anthony Black would be a nice fit. And yeah, a guy who will average you, hopefully for them, maybe 12 points and, 5 or 6 rebounds maybe in his first year and 5 assists maybe. Definitely would be a really nice thing to bring in. And yeah, I think it just would benefit this Washington Wizards team quite a bit. Now, moving on to pick number 9, we do have the New Orleans Pelicans, who are in an extremely weird spot where they have this really awesome roster. The issue is they just got players who don't want to stay healthy, unfortunately. Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram are two of the best forwards in the league, but they're never on the court, never even on the court together. And when they actually did manage to play some games, we did see that the New Orleans Pelicans were like, I think at one stage the 3rd seed in the West, and looked really, really nice, but they just had a bunch of injuries and they just fell down, even falling past the Lakers, who they own, pick swaps for. So, yeah, it's just an extremely unfortunate thing for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick. I just don't really know what more they need. You could definitely go for a playmaker and maybe something like that, but you've got a hidden gem sitting there like Dyson Daniels, who I think could be exactly like Josh Giddey. Other than them both being Australian, they're both 6'7", pass first type of dudes with decent jumpers who can defend pretty nice on the ball. So he's already kind of there for you. I really don't know what else this team needs. They just need to stay healthy and hope the development of players like Dyson Daniels pans out, because if Daniels becomes what they had Lonzo doing in New Orleans, if not even a lot better, which I think he could, then you should have a really good team, and he'd be an awesome player to keep alongside Zion, CJ, Brandon Ingram. But yeah, you maybe just adding a really nice role player would be the right way to go here. And I think one of the best role players in this draft with the 9th overall pick does happen to be Grady Dick, who is an extremely efficient player who I think has an extremely well-versed jump shot, who could be a guy that very similar to a player like Reggie Bullock, who is kind of being compared to right now, as a guy who you can chuck in the corner every now and then, and of course be a really, really good shooter, a guy who can play the 2 and the 3, but also defend the perimeter really well, which is what Grady Dick has done. Of course, he's from Kansas, and in his season that he has played for them, he's been averaging an extremely efficient 14 points per game, which has been really good. It's being said that Grady Dick is a very versatile wing who is a great shooter with high upside. He's a good athlete who is great at moving without the ball and can always find a good place for a catch and shoot. He's great floor spacing forward with good shot creation ability. My thing is, this team does have already a couple of really nice shooters, but I think if your goal is to have, Dyson Daniels and Zion Williams as your point forwards, which I think is what they're trying to build and have been trying to build right now in New Orleans for a little bit, then you're going to need some shooters around them. They've of course got Trey Murphy, who's there, CJ, Brandon Ingram, and a couple other dudes here and there, but they do still lack some shooting sometimes. Josh Richardson's not an elite shooter. Herbert Jones is not a very good shooter at all. I don't think Jose Alvarado, from remembrance, is a very good shooter. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of lacking on shooting here and there. I don't think Valanciunas has been that good from 3 this season, and has definitely dropped off quite a bit as well to kind of what he used to be. But yeah, I just think if you're going to want to have Zion and, Dyson Daniels as two of the point forwards, you're going to need to add some shooting, and I think a dude like Grady Dick, who can not only add you some really nice 3-point shooting, but he can also be very, very efficient and, I think, reliable. I think you're kind of looking at a dude like Corey Kispert from one of the previous drafts, who I think is averaging around a good, efficient 10 points per game or so for the Wizards. But you're looking at kind of that player, I think, but with Reggie Bullock's type of defense, and a much better perimeter guy who can definitely, I think, switch a lot better, and that's why he's, I think, rated so highly. I think there's also a very big kind of, I think, spectacle that this guy could be a really good shot creator in the league as well, because right now, really, the low that you'd think this guy would achieve is just being a good shooter, right? But I think the high of what he could be is not only a good shooter who can defend, but maybe a guy who could create his own shot when there's an absence of a Brandon Ingram or a Zion Williamson. I feel like maybe that's another thing the Pelicans might need, is as soon as these guys go down, you have no one who can really fill in and create these shots. You're not really going to have a guy like Larry Nance come in and do any of that type of stuff. I just don't think that's practical and, realistic to see Larry Nance just pulling up from the mid-range and creating his own shot. That's the issue with this Pelicans team but it could be solved right here with a guy like Grady Dick, who, with a healthy Zion and a healthy Brandon Ingram, he can be a really nice three-point shooter who can defend the perimeter and switch. But without Zion and without Brandon Ingram, maybe this Grady Dick guy could be a very nice shot creator who can do it on both sides of the court. I think that's what you're kind of wanting if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. And then once you've got him and you, of course, develop Dyson Daniels into hopefully the guy you want him to be, maybe fix up their centers, because Jackson Hayes and Valanciunas haven't been that good. Or hell, maybe even run Zion as a small ball center. That'd be, unstoppable. I think you're going to have a very, very good New Orleans Pelicans team, in the future. Now, with the last pick, we've got pick number 10, and that is the Orlando Magic. And with this pick, I will, of course, have them selecting Taylor Hendricks, who's a 6'9" power forward, who was definitely kind of rose, as a high, drafted player on this list. I think that a lot of people had him a little further down, a month or two ago, but he's really kind of, again, rose to be a really nice player. And at the time of making this video, I think his comparison is actually a bit of a Jeremy Grant type of guy, a 6'9" power forward who can maybe switch to that small forward position, play some nice defense, but hopefully be, a good three-point shooter as well. I think this is a nice thing that could add to the Orlando Magic. I'm not exactly too sure if he is the best player available with this pick. I think there might be a couple more players available, but of course they're all guards, and the Orlando Magic have so many guards. Not just that, even though he might not be the best player available at this pick, I actually think Taylor Hendricks might have the best potential nearly out of all the players I've got available, because you kind of know what you're going to get, and he's even been titled as Mr. Versatility on the court. Some people are calling him, as he's just a kind of guy who's so versatile out there. He can really do it all, and I just think there's not really too much of a knock on this guy. It's being said that he's an extremely good dunker, and just kind of really puts those highlight plays on the court. He's a really good pick and roll type of player that has potential to be really nice in the NBA. His defense is also really good, having a really awesome ability to block shots, and he gets in the passing lanes very, very comfortably, and just seems like a really nice overall fit there as well. It's being said as well that he's also kind of maybe even being compared to a bit of an Andrew Wiggins type of mold if Jeremy Grant isn't the one, which makes me think that, not only can this guy guard the small forward and power forward, but maybe there's the potential that some people see for him to maybe even switch onto a shooting guard in the NBA, which is very hard to kind of find, in a 6'9" type of guy. Like, I mean, you look at Kevin Love, who's 6'8", and he can barely even guard his own position, right? You're looking at a dude who's 6'9" who can maybe push to that shooting guard position as well. The Andrew Wiggins comparison is something I really like. Just a guy who has an extremely nice knack on the defensive end, who's really, really athletic and can put a nice flashy play, on the court as well. It seems like his shooting ability is pretty nice as well. And again, I think that's where he gets his Jeremy Grant, type of comparison as well, where in terms of a guy who can, guard the power forward and small forward, but be a nice shooter, it seems like you can almost slot this guy in as a role player, or maybe potentially down the line try and see if he could become a shot creator. I think right now that is kind of the dream, to see if he could become a good shot creator in the league. But I think what a lot of people are saying is right now is this is the type of dude who could be maybe an an all-star type of role player. And what I mean by that is, I think Andrew Wiggins is the perfect example. He's not the best player on his team. In fact, he's seen as by a role player by some, but almost too, good to be recognized as that. And that's what happened to Andrew Wiggins. He was so good at being an elite role player that he became an all-star and an all-star starter. And I think this is what could happen with this type of guy. I feel like he'd be a really awesome Jonathan Isaac type of replacement who they unfortunately haven't really had the services of due to all the injuries that guy has unfortunately had in the last couple of years of his career. I think they will definitely lose him. He'll probably leave for a fresh start or something like that. And you bring in a dude like Taylor Hendricks who can really kind of replace everything that Jonathan Isaac did in those really nice couple of games that he played for the Magic this season. He also fits really well into this team as they don't have a lot of forwards at the moment other than Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. They're not really developing, I think, anyone else there. And if they keep all their guards and all of that type of stuff and maybe sign a center and bring Taylor Hendricks off, maybe to start off the bench and, do that, I think you're going to look at a really, really nice, solid team. And I just think he kind of fits what the Orlando Magic are really looking for right now. Pick 11, we actually have the Toronto Raptors, who have definitely had a really interesting season. I feel like this could honestly be one of those seasons that's kind of put as a best perfect example of, going a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. And at this pick, I think they've actually got a player that's really, really nice and has fallen directly into their lap in this mock draft that I've done. And that's actually going to be Cason Wallace. Now, I think Cason Wallace is actually a really, really special player who honestly just fits exactly what the Toronto Raptors seem to look for when they're looking for, a player to not only draft, but a player to actually fit into their system that's kind of already given away what he's good at, which is, of course, defense. But this comparison is just absolutely awesome and something that I can definitely see really working for the Toronto Raptors. And he's actually being compared to Drew Holiday, who we know is one of the best defenders in the NBA. Some believe is the best defender in the NBA, and I think he will potentially finish top 3 nearly in defensive player of the year so far in 2023. It's an absolutely awesome pick for the Toronto Raptors. It's being said that he's a productive scorer that can create his own shot. He's very capable of potentially becoming a very consistent 3-point threat, as well as being able to stretch the floor from all parts of the court and being really nice as a catch and shoot type of player. He's also a really nice ball handler, but he definitely does need to work on his left-hand dribble, it's being said. And it's also kind of said that he can potentially switch from the 1 and the 2 with quite ease and comfort as well. He's a 6'3" point guard who, again, really does have that Drew Holiday type of mold where he's a pretty decent scorer, pretty decent playmaker, but most of all, this guy is an absolute threat when it does come to being a good defender. And I just think this absolutely fits into exactly what the Toronto Raptors are looking for, because if we actually take a look at their team right now, we're not entirely too sure if Fred VanVleet will be staying. I've heard words that Toronto wouldn't even mind if he does leave, sorry. I'm not too sure what everyone's opinions are going to be on that, but it doesn't exactly fit the system that they're trying to do in Toronto. I also believe that the Toronto Raptors' long-term plan is to potentially have Scotty Barnes run as a bit of a point forward. We know he could definitely do that really, really well in college, and they have experimented with it a couple of times since he has been in the NBA, but I have a feeling if they go and get a dude like Cason Wallace, who they say to him, hey, you're a pretty decent playmaker, you're a pretty decent scorer, but you don't have to really rely on anything with that on our team. All you got to do is rely on as being the best defender you possibly can, and then all the other things will come. I think that will be an absolute perfect fit for the Toronto Raptors. Like, just imagine being able to have Cason Wallace and, Scotty Barnes potentially share the ball and run the point guard duties. I think it would be a really awesome thing. And if you bring him in, let's just say Van Vliet maybe goes, or something like this type of situation happens, they could legitimately have a starting five that looks like Wallace at the 1, potentially Barnes at the 2, Anunoby at the 3, Siakam at the 4, and Poeltl at the 5. Jeez, that would be probably the best defensive starting 5 in the league. And if you're wondering, well, where's the scoring gonna come from? Because you'd be relying on Pascal Siakam quite a bit. We know that Anunoby has really been wanting to be a big shot creator on the team for quite a bit, and I think he'd be able to step into that. Not just that, you've got a couple of really, really awesome scorers off the bench to really help this team. I definitely don't think it would be a bad idea at all to maybe go for a guy like Cason Wallace at that point guard position. And again, Gary Trent off the bench, add that scoring. Yeah, it'd definitely be a really scary thing to go against that starting 5. Not only defensively, but I think there's a lot of potential offensively as well. And that's honestly just the ultimate scary threat about this. So having Cason Wallace, drop to them with that 11th overall pick is kind of just a match made in heaven for them. Now, I'm going to be moving on to the 12th overall pick right now, where I do, of course, have the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz are a really interesting team because they have one of my all-time favorite players in the NBA right now in Lauri Markkanen, who I think was a very big catalyst to actually helping the Cleveland Cavaliers be kind of what they are right now. And he has grown into being a really awesome all-star. You know, they've got a bunch of other really nice young players here and there as well, who I'm sure are probably going to be all-stars very soon. But in saying this, they don't exactly have, I think, the greatest guard depth anymore, and I definitely think they're going to be wanting to try and improve on that through this draft. So it's, I think, a pretty good thing for them, because it's not only a best player situation, but it happens that the best players that are going right now happen to fill a positional need that I genuinely think the Utah Jazz have. And that is, of course, finding a new guard. So with this 12th overall pick, I will have them selecting Keyonte George, who I think is probably going to be one of the steals potentially from this draft. There's a lot of, I think, reports saying that Keyonte George could 100% go like pick 8, pick 9, but again, because some of the teams that I've had picking earlier don't really need a shooting guard like him, he's managed to fall to the pick number 12, and that's what Utah have right now. And I think he's a very special player who could definitely help them out quite a bit. For example, on the offensive end, he's really being compared to a Bradley Beal, just a really excellent shot creator who could become an all-star doing that one day. Of course, as well, potentially on the defensive end, a three-point aspect, even being Eric Gordon, who has almost gone quite underrated for most of his career. I feel like Eric Gordon has had a lot of injuries in his career, but I remember a time where I think it was the 2019 playoffs or so, where there was a stat that actually said that the Houston Rockets' second best player on the court, other than James Harden, was not Chris Paul, it wasn't Clint Capella, it wasn't PJ Tucker, it was actually Eric Gordon, because his defensive efficiency and three-point shooting, all of the above, was just so amazing in those playoffs. So to be able to be compared to a guy like Eric Gordon and Bradley Beal is just really good for Keyonte George. If we're going to move on from his comparisons now, Keyonte George is a 6'4" shooting guard who has a really nice knacked ability on the scoring and, kind of being able to shoot really well, whether it's from the catch and shoot or the shot creation. He's also a really, really fast guy who just seems to be able to outrun those defenders, and he's just kind of being labeled as a natural born bucket is what a lot of websites are calling this guy. Now, of course, there are some downsides to him. It's being said that he doesn't really have elite blow-by speed or really an elite first step for that much, and he can sometimes not be very crafty with his ball handling. But again, even though that is a bit of a concern in the NBA, especially considering this is the type of competition where you kind of have to be clever with how you handle the ball so you can score, I think as time will go, he can definitely, be able to, I think, learn that and kind of judge how the NBA game is played, and therefore, quickly after that, I think his ball movement and whatnot will probably improve. It's also being said that he has a really nice mid-range jumper, nice three-point shot, and he's really good at getting to the rim and scoring through contact. So this is just a really awesome type of scorer who could maybe one day, I think, develop and be a solid player like Eric Gordon on the defensive type of end. I just think his true shooting will be something that could be really kind of looked at as a spectacle in the NBA, because if he gets his shot creation going and he can do that somewhat efficiently, it would be a really nice, thing to maybe see. Again, in saying that, his defense might not be near that Eric Gordon type of level thus far. It is being said that he's a very pesky on-ball defender who gives a good effort and takes the task personally. He might not be big on steals and blocks, but he can definitely hold his own against the 1 and 2. So realistically, this just kind of fits into what Utah need, because even though I don't think they have a future point guard and shooting guard just yet, I mean, there's a lot of question marks still on players like Colin Sexton. I think he's probably going to be more of a six-man down the line. I do think bringing in a player like Keontae George to maybe be your future starting shooting guard and putting him alongside Markkanen and Kessler, it definitely makes a lot of sense to me. And I think some people might honestly see this as one of the steals of my mock draft thus far. I think this is a really good move for the Utah Jazz. And not only is he best available, but he also fits a positional need that they kind of need to tick off and get that kind of down, because this team could be seriously good if they, got some guards back. I mean, when they had Mike Conley and whatnot, they were playing some really good basketball, but they've dropped off a little bit, and I think that might be solely due to the fact that their guard depth is a little bit lacking. But yeah, Keontae George kind of answers some of their problems, and he could be a very nice long-term prospect. Now, with the 13th overall pick, I have OKC, and there was a lot of players to, take with this team. Like, they've got a really, really nice starting five, I think, going into the future. But with this pick, I decided to take a player who I think was more of a positional need rather than necessarily best available. But that's actually being Kyle Filipowski, who I think would make a whole lot of sense for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, as they do kind of lack, I think, if anything, on that center position, and even the power forward, really. I mean, Jalen Williams has played there for the majority of the season. Is he a natural born power forward? I'm not exactly too sure. I think a lot of people had him more of playing the small forward type of position, but Kyle Filipowski can definitely not only play center, but can play power forward, which is pretty extraordinary for a dude who's 7 foot. I've seen some people compare this guy to a bit of a Karl Anthony Towns. Now, I'm not too sure how much I like that. I guess they play similar, but I think in terms of, dominating in the paint and, I think the body build and whatnot isn't quite like Karl Anthony Towns was in his prime just yet. There is still a big chance that this guy could potentially develop maybe into being something very special in the NBA. It's being said that he's a pretty slick ball handler, especially for his height. He's one of those 7-footers that also has a really nice passing ability and can space the floor extremely well. It's also said that he has a bit of point forward type of skills, and that's what I kind of mean. I don't think Karl Anthony Towns has necessarily shown that in his career. I think Cat's more of a guy who dominates in the paint while also having an extremely good 3-point jumper. Again, Cat might not be able to as much now, but back in Cat's prime, like a couple years ago, I think people forget how dominant he could be in the paint. Yeah, this Kyle Filipowski guy definitely seems to be a bit better with the ball and being able to be a little bit of a point forward even at times, which, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if that could maybe translate to the NBA. He does have the point forward skills. Will he be able to be a point forward? Probably not in the NBA, but again, the fact this dude is 7 foot and can shoot threes really consistently and has a really nice pass on him and can space the floor and all that type of stuff is definitely something that I think people are not looking at, enough. Like, we've seen the more Nikola Jokic type of guys who just have the ability to spread the floor and pass the ball extremely well, but just being able to shoot threes. I think that's what I would liken Kyle Filipowski more to being more of like a Nikola Jokic, and how he kind of plays his game with a bit of point forward skills, but can shoot the three ball. Again, Jokic has never necessarily been known as like I think a point forward. He's obviously a center, but he definitely has like those traits of being an extremely good passer. I mean, this guy is one of the best, if not the best passer, quite possibly in the NBA. And you don't see people calling him a point forward, obviously, because the way he plays his basketball, he's been kind of, turned into a center on the NBA level. And I think that's maybe what will happen to Kyle Filipowski. I don't think he's going to really come into the NBA and be this power forward who, can potentially have the ball and potentially pass consistently all the time. I think there'll be traits of him having really good passes and, spreading the floor, maybe similar to an Alfred Şengün, who gets better and better over time as well. But I definitely feel like he's going to play that center position, I think, more than the power forward maybe in the NBA. But just kind of the theory that I have that OKC could legitimately have him and Chet starting in that same lineup would be, I think, really, really cool. Chet's a bit different in my eyes, where I'm not too sure. I think he kind of fits in that weird mold that Filipowski does as well, where he almost is like a power forward / center as well. And I think that having both of them on the court would be a really, really interesting thing, as they could both not only switch on to the power forward, but also switch on to the center position. Both can also hit the three ball and have a really nice passing ability. So it would be a really awesome thing. Of course, Chet will be the more natural, better shot creator. But yeah, having those five, with Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, maybe Lou Dort or Jalen Williams at the small forward. I think Filipowski and Holmgren swapping as the power forward / center duo. Literally everyone on that team can pass the ball. Everyone can shoot pretty much. I think everyone can help on the defensive side of the ball as well. I just think it would actually be a really nice player to maybe see come into this team. I'm not exactly too sure. Again, websites have him listed as power forward, and a lot of scouting reports do as well. But yeah, I think going into the NBA, he might play minutes at power forward, but I see this dude maybe playing some center minutes quite a fair bit as well. But I'm not too sure. He could definitely turn into how Larry Markkinen is a 6'11", 7-foot guy, but can literally guard small forward. If Filipowski can do that, then geez, the NBA better watch out. But I think his first couple years, he'll be a bit of a power forward / center, I think, for the time being. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how that kind of does unfold down the line as well. Now, with the 14th overall pick, this was a little bit of a harder pick to kind of do, because at the time making this video, the Dallas Mavericks have fallen all the way to pick 14. How long they'll be there for, I'm not exactly too sure. They haven't really done that well in recent games, which definitely does suck to see, because I actually kind of like Luka and Kyrie playing together. I'm not going to lie. Even though I don't really think it will probably work long term, I don't know why. It's just something inside makes me want it to work. I don't really know, and I'm going to be basing this video off the assumption that Kyrie Irving will be re-signing with Dallas, which I'm not exactly too sure if he will. So I probably won't be drafting a guard here. So with this kind of 14th overall pick, I went more of the forward type of direction, where I actually am taking a 6'7" / 6'8" small forward in Jet Howard from Michigan, who I actually think would be a really nice player to put alongside Luka and Kyrie. There's only three really, I think, established players on this Dallas team who I think will 100% be starting next season. And that is, of course, Kyrie, Luka, and Josh Green. I'm a very big Josh Green fan. I think they should 100% have him as the future starting small forward. And he gets better and better every year. He plays really nice defense and can shoot the ball and doesn't need the ball to be effective. So I think he'd be really good. And I think Jet Howard kind of fits in the same mold as a guy you can maybe play as a, not necessarily small ball power forward, He's 6'8", but a guy who not necessarily as good defensively yet, but can maybe translate in the NBA. And I think you can definitely put him at that power forward position. Maybe doesn't have to start there. He can come off the bench and just play forward minutes. But I actually think Jett Howard makes a lot of sense for this team, considering he is a really, really good catch and shoot player. It's being said that he actually excels in catch and shoot situations, which is just really awesome for this Dallas Mavericks team, and it's exactly what they need. Last thing they need is another guy to take the ball off Kyrie or Luka Doncic. So bringing in a dude like Jett Howard to come in who can just, sit in the corner and whatnot and catch and shoot would be a really awesome decision for them. It's also being said that he's just a really nice, talented scorer who not only can play small forward and power forward, but can also go to that shooting guard position as a bit of a more taller player. His main trait is he's just really, really good at being an off-ball guard as well. When he does need to be, or an off-ball forward, when he does need to, potentially shot create, he has known that he can do that quite well too. And I definitely think, if you're gonna put a guy with Luka and Kyrie, maybe if one of them gets injured and you're looking for a dude to shot create here and there, maybe you're looking at a guy like Jett Howard to stand up and do that. But for the time being, if we're gonna say that Kyrie and Luka are fully healthy, which touch wood for them, that's hopefully gonna be the case, then having a dude like Jett Howard who can, switch from the 2 to the 4, not only on defense, but can come in and just not be relied on to shot create, but relied on to catch and shoot, I think just works perfectly for what Kyrie and Luka are trying to do, in the NBA. Again, Josh Green is the perfect example of the mold that they're trying to create right there, and I think he works really well for Dallas. But again, Jett Howard, he's a similar type of guy who can be a really, really efficient catch and shoot type of guy who can maybe switch from 2 to 4, while also potentially having the potential down the road at being a really nice shot creator. I think that just makes sense for where Dallas are sitting and the situation that they are in to, of course, go for it. And worst case scenario, let's just say Kyrie does leave in free agency and you go back to Luka at the 1, then even having a prospect of Luka at the 1, Josh Green at the 2, and Jett Howard at the 3 is also a scary thing. Like, imagine Luka just passing it off to these really, really efficient catch and shoot type of guys who don't need the ball to, be able to score efficiently all the time. You do that, and then of course Luka can go back to defend the 1. You got these 2 really capable wings to just go out and guard the small forward, go out and guard the shooting guard. That would just be a really good situation as well, even if Kyrie, does decide to leave. But again, I think he could stay. Will he? I'm not exactly too sure, but even if he does stay, or even if he goes, I still think this is the pick to make. He is a player who has a lot of potential down the line as well to just be a really solid player. And if he kind of converts to the NBA level, which I know some people are saying he definitely can, then yeah, you're already on another step forward to, I think, creating a championship team with Kyrie and Luka. Putting dudes around them like Jett Howard, like Josh Green, is the steps that you need to take to win a championship. Again, you do that, you bring in maybe some defenders off the bench and whatnot, an actual defensive center, and you've probably got a way, way, way better team. So again, there's a couple things they need to do, which I think they will. They've usually got a pretty decent management, and I think they might fix a lot of the stuff and correct them in free agency in the draft. But yeah, I think drafting a guy like Jett Howard with the 14th overall pick just makes a whole lot of sense for their franchise and their future. Of course, with the 15th overall pick, it's actually supposed to go to Minnesota. That's where they sit on the NBA standings right now. But we know that they actually gave their pick up to Utah, which is why, I've got them going. That was, of course, in the Rudy Gobert trade and whatnot. So, again, these will be kind of course, being based off where the teams are sitting on the standings right now. And, of course, this could very much change. There are a couple of games, left to go and whatnot, but hopefully it should pretty much stay very close to what I've got going on right now. But with the 15th overall pick, we do have the Utah Jazz from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And with this pick, I've actually got them selecting a player who I think would be really beneficial for their team in Nick Smith Jr., who I think makes a whole lot of sense. I previously had them selecting Keontae George with their own pick, who is of course going to be a shooting guard in this draft. And again, he has a lot of really nice potential that can help the Utah Jazz out. And it's just a big thing right now where the Jazz really need some guards. And I genuinely think with their, first pick they've got, they can find their shooting guard. But with the next one, I think they can find their point guard in Nick Smith, who I guess has been kind of talked about being more of a combo guard so far. But I definitely feel like he has a lot of really nice point guard abilities in him and could definitely start there in the long-term future. He's a 6'4", 6'5" type of guy who is also really, really lanky and long. It feels kind of awkward to say that about a man, but this dude is 6'9" and has a really nice three-point jumper that's really smooth. There's only a couple of knocks on his game so far, as his frame isn't exactly that great, and it does look like he needs to add quite a bit more weight, especially if he wants to fit into, the NBA. So that can definitely be a rough start for him if he doesn't do that. But I think as time will go on, it will definitely work out. He's a bit more of a project type of player in terms of that. Doesn't exactly have that NBA built body yet. But if you get him in with some trainers and get that diet going, he could be a really, nice player in terms of a guy who still needs to develop though. He's also been said that he's battled some knee issues in the past, which has slowed him down, which isn't exactly that great, but it is said that he's lights out with the ball, a pretty nice defender, and it is kind of being compared to a bit of Jaden Ivey here and there as well, I've been hearing, which is an absolutely awesome comparison. I really like Jaden Ivey as a player. I think he's helped the Detroit Pistons out quite a bit and has been pretty serviceable for them so far. He's the type of guy who can definitely score at that point guard position, but he can guard the shooting guard and guard the point guard while still being a pretty effective playmaker or so. And I think this will come in handy with Utah. If you partner him up with Keontae George, you've basically got two 6'4", 6'5", guards who I think are going to feed off each other really well defensively. They're both pretty good scorers who have decent jump shots. I just think, Nick Smith, he probably doesn't have that NBA built ready frame yet, and definitely, has had his injury issues, but I think would be a nice player for this Utah Jazz team to probably select. With the 16th overall pick though, I do have the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks are a bit more of a challenge, I think. There's definitely a couple things they need, but I'm not too sure if they can really fix a lot of this with the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick, but at the time making this video, I've just kind of got them best available right now, which is Jordan Hawkins, I believe, who's a 6'5" shooting guard. It's being said that Hawkins is one of the better three-point shooters in the draft class, who has incredibly great, movement around that three-point line and knows how to get open, and he's really good at coming off screens. I just figured he would kind of fit well with a DeJounte Murray or a Trae Young. I think what they're going to be going for if they do take a draft player is a bit of maybe that type of role player that can fit what Kevin Huerter kind of left. I feel like Kevin Huerter low-key left a bigger hole than what the Atlanta Hawks were intending. I think they thought he wasn't as important to their team, and they kind of let him walk. Well, they did trade him, I believe, to the Sacramento Kings, but they would have let him walk anyway and whatnot. So I think losing a really good three-point shooter like Huerter, who can feed off a guy like Trae Young and, DeJounte Murray, definitely hurt them quite a bit. And if you bring in a dude like Jordan Hawkins, I think that's a pretty decent idea as well. The other thing is Jordan Hawkins is being said that he actually might have a potential to be a really nice shot creator one day, which I also feel like helps. If DeJounte Murray's shot creating and shooting isn't going that well on a particular night, which is been a bit of a theme so far this season. It's really just left to Trae Young to kind of do everything, and they don't exactly have a high-profile scorer off, the bench. So I feel like if you bring in a dude like Jordan Hawkins, he might be able to get good minutes as a shooting guard or small forward, where if you need him to be a three-point shooter, 3-and-D type of guy, he can do it. But if you need him to be a scorer, he might be able to do that part as well. In fact, one of the comparisons he's actually been listed to was Anthony Simons. It's being said that he's really got a good dribble drive game, where he can potentially create his own shots. He's got a really nice, solid defensive game as well. It's just kind of said that his frame isn't exactly great, and he kind of follows a similar thing where his body might not be NBA ready yet, similar to the previous pick that I had in Nick Smith Jr. There's some people saying as well that teams might like to slot him into being a small forward in the NBA, and being 6'5" is a very big concern. That's pretty small for your prototypical type of small forward, and we've seen guys like Isaac Okoro kind of struggle with that in the NBA, where an Isaac Okoro could easily go and lock up Jalen Brunson. He can go and lock up I hope that I haven't said that too soon, because the Cavs play the Knicks in the playoffs so soon, so I'm not sure about that. But also, Isaac Okoro has been known he can be able to lock up a dude like Bradley Beal. But he's struggled on guys like LeBron James and whatnot in his NBA career, just being too small at that small forward position. Will Jordan Hawkins kind of fit in that same mold that Okoro has struggled with? I'm not sure. Okoro still has a lot of time to, resurrect it, and he's been much better defensively in that kind of regard, especially this season. His three-point jump shot's finally starting to crack down. I think Jordan Hawkins might see a similar struggle, but if he gets a lot of shooting guard minutes, I'm sure him and Bogdan Bogdanovic can maybe tackle, how that shooting guard, small forward, wing type of minutes. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. We know Bogey has struggled with getting on the court, so that's another thing. You bring in Hawkins, he kind of fills in for the minutes that Bogdanovic kind of lacks with. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how this, of course, does go. And I do think it's a smart pick by the Atlanta Hawks, but I wouldn't be surprised if they traded this pick on as well. Now, with the 17th overall pick, we do have the Los Angeles Lakers, and I'm not going to lie, I always manage to forget how to say this guy's name, and I don't know, the pronunciation, I've heard 800 different people pronounce this guy's name different, but I'm probably going to pronounce his name different 800 different times in this video as well. But that is Rayan Rupert, who is actually coming out of the New Zealand Breakers in the NBL. I definitely know I didn't say that right then. I feel like I really didn't. It's very upsetting, but just live with it, guys. But yeah, I'm just going to be calling him Rupert for this video because I've already forgotten how to say his first name. But anyway, I've watched this guy in the NBL, and he's a really, really nice player. As a guy who is from Australia myself, it's really good that a lot of these players are coming from their countries and playing in the NBL to play for these teams. And yeah, we've seen Ousmane Dieng from the Oklahoma City Thunder be quite successful in doing this. He actually previously played for the New Zealand Breakers as well, and ended up getting drafted in the top 15 picks, I believe, to Oklahoma. I think Rupert, another guy who's also from France, who also plays for the New Zealand Breakers, I feel like he's going to try and imitate what Dieng has been able to do and accomplish, and that's why I think he went to New Zealand and whatnot. He's also being compared to another French guy in Nicolas Batum, who's had a very great career and an underrated one, I think. A lot of this guy was, for most of his career, was called an overpaid player, especially on the Charlotte Hornets, but now he's been able to kind of carve out a 10 or so year career that looks like it's going to go on for a long more time, and he's been a very solid contributor for this Los Angeles Clippers team, and I actually like this comparison. You're looking at a dude who's much taller, who can definitely smash out those three-point shots, really kind of switch from 1 to 4, which is a thing that people don't talk about in Batum's game enough. He's not really the fastest guy out there, but he literally played shooting guard on the Charlotte Hornets and then went over to the Los Angeles Clippers and played power forward. from what I'm hearing, Rupert definitely has the ability where he can maybe be able to do that as well. So his defensive game, and I think utility-wise, he's a very, very good player to potentially have on that court. He definitely embraces that positionless basketball type of thing, and he adds some height into a Los Angeles Lakers team that definitely struggled for height, especially in this last season or so. Again, I think it makes a whole lot of sense if you put a three-point shooter alongside LeBron who can switch from 1 to 4 any given time. It's going to be serviceable. It's just very obvious, and I think this is what he's going to like. Now, I believe he's a bit smaller than Zhang. He is 6'7", and he is listed as a shooting guard. But hey, as I said earlier, his comparison is Batum. Batum's a dude who was a shooting guard that skipped the small forward process and went straight to being a power forward. It's being said that Rupert is a prototypical 3-and-D wing with great length and a lot of versatility. He slides his feet well and has great lateral movement and overall agility. His quick hands and get a lot of deflections and steal. He's not yet a very consistent three-point shooter, but has the ability to be a nice floor spacer in the next level. It's also said that his playmaking abilities are a bit underrated, and he definitely has some untapped potential in potentially initiating an offense. So yeah, I think this is a really good idea to add to the Los Angeles Lakers. This is a smart move, and I think it's someone who can fit well with LeBron and whatnot. It's a taller wing type of player who can add that defense that the Los Angeles Lakers desperately struggled with for a lot of this most recent season. But most importantly, if his three-point shooting stays consistent, who wouldn't want a 6'7", 3-and-D type of wing who maybe has the potential to move on to the small forward, power forward type of, position? Could it happen? I'm not exactly too sure. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this, and I think the Los Angeles Lakers will be keeping a very close eye on him. Now, moving on, of course, from this, we're going to be going to the Houston Rockets at pick 18, who have Jalen Hood-Schifino, who I have them taking. This was an extremely hard pick because I've already got the Houston Rockets taking a point guard, obviously, with the best point guard we know in the draft, in Scoot Henderson. But I saw Jalen Hood-Schifino on this list, and I was thinking, damn, he can't fall down any further. I just can't let it happen. He's too good of a player. And the reality is, he's not your prototypical type of point guard. He's actually 6'6". So I definitely feel like he could be a shooting guard, small forward in the NBA as well. And it's even being said, he's definitely more of a combo guard than just your strict point guard. But he definitely, I think, has preferred to play there in the most recent time. The reality is, though, the Houston Rockets are not really in a situation to be picky. Look, 2 point guards in the one draft is probably not great. But if you draft Scoot Henderson, you're probably going to be moving on from Kevin Porter Jr. And I don't think they really have a good backup point guard anyway. So if you get in Hood-Schifino, the reality is you're bringing in a 6'6" dude who not only can play point guard, but he can play backup shooting guard minutes. He can play backup small forward minutes as well. And he's best available. It's being said that he's a rock-solid guard who's best playing on the ball, facilitating the offense and being a glue guy on both ends of the court. He's being said that he's a really good defender and a fierce competitor, something that the Houston Rockets don't exactly have a lot of. So if you add this guy, you can bring in a dude who can guard 1 through 3, really good defense, and could maybe control the offense when, off the bench, and when Scoot Henderson, of course, goes on that bench. It's being said that he's an extremely aggressive defender who takes pride in shutting down opposing guards. His defensive traits and abilities should translate extremely well to the NBA. It's said that he has a pretty good looking jump shot, but he has a bit of inconsistency hitting that 3 ball and is a below average free throw shooter as well. It's definitely his biggest area of growth in the league, being said that he needs to get that 3-point shot consistent and definitely needs to start hitting those free throws. But I think if you're the Houston Rockets and you have a lot of time to experiment, if you get lucky enough to have Scoot Henderson as your new starting point guard, he can definitely run the offense there. But then, of course, you can also bring, I think, Hood Schifino potentially off the bench to do his thing, get the ball in his hands, and of course he can help defend. Look, he's probably not going to be the greatest off-ball, type of guy, just because he can't really shoot that well. But there's still a way where he and Scoot Henderson, I think, could also share the court together. Look, he and Scoot Henderson could play, I think, a bit of a double guard system, definitely at a lot of times. Anyway, you'll have Scoot Henderson defending the 1, and of course Hood Schifino defending the 2. But then on offense, you might have the ball more in Hood Schifino's type of hands because he can play make really well. And then you might have Henderson play a bit of off ball when he's getting tired and whatnot. And I think Henderson definitely has the ability to do that as well, being an extremely athletic shot creator who can definitely hit a catch and shoot shot or two. So this makes a whole lot of sense in my opinion for the Houston Rockets to do. I don't think just because you've already drafted a guard that it should shy you away from drafting another point guard. I think that this guy fits in with what the Houston Rockets need. They desperately need defense and playmaking and just a floor general in general. I think this just makes a really, good idea. And yeah, look, you might get some critics and you might get some eye rolls. You've drafted 2 point guards. But hey, I actually really like this idea in my opinion. Now, moving on to pick 19, we actually have the Golden State Warriors, who I'm not exactly too sure if they're going to be really drafting a player with this pick as well. They definitely could, I think, trade this pick. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, but in saying all that, I've decided to kind of take a player who I think fits their system in Bryce Sensabaugh, who I just think makes a whole lot of sense for this team as well. You're looking at a 6'6" wing player who's a really nice 3-point shooter who, let's be honest here, the Golden State Warriors absolutely love. They created the 6'6" extremely good 3-point shooter in Klay Thompson, of course. It's being said that Sensabaugh is an extremely good 6'6" combo forward with very high skill level. He's a walking bucket who's really able to create his own shot, but is extremely good from the mid-range and can definitely shoot a 3 here and there. It's being said that he has a solid NBA type of build and has a ton of natural power. He has advanced ball handling for his size and is very quick on the first step, and he also excels at scoring through contact. It's being said that one of the best things about his game though is he has a beautiful jump shot and is extremely accurate. I just think, yeah, if you hear that and you're the Golden State Warriors, you think twice about maybe trading this pick. You're probably sitting there and you're like, damn, we got a guy here who could come in and really do what our system has been able to do so greatly for so many years right now. And that's come in, shoot threes, be a decent shot creator, but just space the floor out. Like, there's a reality. If this dude, his defense seems to be okay, but because he's such a big body and whatnot, I have no worries or trouble with this Ohio State player translating his game into the NBA. My theory is, who says you couldn't see a time where you maybe see something real small ball of Steph Curry at point guard, Klay Thompson at shooting guard, DiVincenzo like at small forward, of course, their new Ohio State player at power forward maybe, and a Draymond Green at center. Could you imagine Draymond Green playmaking to these 4 sharpshooters who are all capable of defending their own player, switching onto a different player here and there? Maybe not Steph, but he makes up for it in other things, I promise. But being able to switch from like basically 2 from 4, which a lot of these guys can do, and just hit that 3 ball, whether it's, or it just shot create or on the catch and shoot, whatever it is. Whereas the mid-range, the 3-point shot, or even from the free throw line, all of these guys can do exactly that. This is kind of just a match made in heaven for the Golden State Warriors. I definitely think if you're the Warriors and you see this guy sitting on the draft board, you're thinking, look, we could maybe trade him for another role player like a Dante DiVincenzo, that 8 to 12 million type of player who could be a serviceable type of role player. We could maybe trade our pick for that type of player. Or we could go and, you know, be a little bit, I think, risky and go and draft an Ohio State dude named Bryce Sensabaugh at this pick, but he just fits in with our system. Get him in, see how he goes, and I think that's what the Warriors could definitely decide to do. He won't start, of course. They've still got Wiggins. I still think they're going to bring back Draymond in free agency. I know it's a big consensus. He's probably going to leave, but Draymond's just done so much for this team. He's so crucial to the way players like Steph Curry and whatnot play. I think you got to keep Draymond in the team, hopefully, for them. And this just makes a whole lot of sense, in my opinion. And look, you bring in this type of dude, he might not be able to start just yet, because you've already got so many good players starting here and there. But my way of thinking is, you can bring this dude off the bench. He can play the 10 to 20 minutes per night off the bench, give you those serviceable minutes, hopefully accurate three-point shooting, nice mid-range shot, just space the floor out in general. And I think this makes a whole lot of sense if you're a Golden State Warriors fan and from a Golden State Warriors point of view. Now, moving on to the last pick of this, what I've got going on right now, I've got the Miami Heat, and I will actually be selecting Noah Clowney, who has definitely been kind of said to be a bit more of a project player, I think, going into this draft. But if we're looking at Noah Clowney, I actually think he really fits in a lot of what that Miami Heat team needs, and that's just a power forward. I mean, they've been playing Kevin Love at power forward, and they've had a bit more success. I think Kevin Love actually had a 20-point or so game the other day, which was pretty impressive for the old fella, and he's actually looking a lot better than he did with the Cleveland Cavaliers, this first half of the season. He's looking a bit better with this Miami Heat team right now, but I think they need a power forward like Noah Clowney who can just come in and take some of the heat off Bam Adebayo. I don't think it's truly appreciated how underrated Bam Adebayo is right now, because Bam has to do so much. The Miami Heat's backup centers are pretty bad. You got Dwayne Dedmon there, he's average. He's definitely just an average player. And you look at their power forward depth, for most of the season, they were playing one of the Martin brothers there, who's definitely not a power forward. Even though I really like him and I think he's a good player, he's a small forward. So they went out, got Kevin Love, but I think that's a bit of a short-term solution. I think Kevin Love next season will, hopefully for their sake, just be a nice role player off the bench. They desperately need to find their starting power forward. I think they can do it in free agency. I always thought they should have never let Jay Crowder walk. They let Crowder walk to bring in PJ Tucker. I thought that was a weird decision. Crowder went to Phoenix and played well there. Now he's at the Bucks. I think Crowder would be a cheap option who you could bring back to try and start. But if you want to bring in a younger dude, Noah Clowney actually would help. He's a 6'10" guy who's an extremely good rebounder, it looks like. So he'll be able to take, I think, a lot of the pressure off Bam Adebayo when it does come to rebounding here and there. It's being said that he's a pretty decent defender, but a really nice, solid shot blocker. Pretty good athletically and has a good motor. Can definitely, go the game there. His biggest pro, though, seems to be he has a lot of potential at being a really good defensive type of rebounder. I think I would like to actually compare him to a bit of Jared Vanderbilt from the Los Angeles Lakers. A guy who's a pretty average shooter, but definitely makes up for it with his extremely good hustle and terrific defense, but can also get a really nice board and even play small ball center. I definitely think as Noah Clowney gets a little bit older and progresses his game, he could very much take this to the next level and I think help out this Miami Heat team. Some of the weaknesses that's being said, though, is that he's not a great ball handler and he can be kind of prone to the good old turnover here and there, which isn't great. He has sometimes that undisciplined defense by giving away a foul. But that's what I'm just saying. This guy's a bit more of a kind of a project player who could be very good in the long term. And then some people say that his shooting does need a bit of improvement. But my theory and the way that I'm thinking about this is, if that you're the Miami Heat, you don't need a guy to be an extremely good shooter. You don't need a guy to be a good ball handler or anything like that. You just need a guy who can come in and help Bam Adebayo out. Give this guy a bit of a chill pill to not have to go off every single game. A guy who can help out when it does come to rebounding. A guy who can help Bam guard the power forward and center position. A dude who can maybe switch from there and whatnot. And of course, just get the rebound and be good defensively. Of course, I do think the Heat need maybe another shooter or two. But they've still got players here and there like Martin and like Kevin Love now and like Hero who are really good shooters. I still think maybe adding a dude like a Jay Crowder would be a smart decision so you don't have to start Noah Clowney just yet. But I don't think it would be the worst idea to give a dude like Noah Clowney, a young guy, go at that starting power forward position where he can come help rebound, he can come help, of course, be really good defensively, which is what the Miami Heat system is known to be for quite a bit. But of course, just to develop alongside Bam Adebayo and just give the guy a hand because, Bam's next best option at that power forward and center position are Kevin Love and Dwayne Dedmon. Two dudes who are well past their prime and don't exactly move that great out there on the court. So bringing in a dude like Noah Clowney, I think actually makes a lot of sense and helps them out, especially in the long term. It's a positional pick that makes a lot of sense, and you're giving a young kid a go who has a lot of potential, in the league. You don't have to start him straight away. It's an option, but you could maybe bring in a dude like Jay Crowder, who you already know fits in with your team. He literally helps you guys get to a final series. Really good defensively, underrated defender, and a good three-point shooter. You can start him, maybe bring Clowney off the bench, and he can watch Jay Crowder and how he plays his game and maybe develop into something similar. So of course, I would definitely really like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys agree with my mock draft or do you guys not? I would very much like to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to my, my gaming channel and my IRL/vlogging channel, and check out my podcast as well, which will be down below if you haven't already. I'll be linking them all there, but most importantly, just comment what you guys think and whatnot. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.